Good afternoon. You can tell that my day's been all kinds of mixed up because we had a school closing, both my own children and the school I was going to. So it's been kind of a backwards day for me, a backwards Monday. So I'm sure it is for all of you guys as well. And I am really happy though that you decided to come on to our session this afternoon. So just as housekeeping again, as we've done in the past sessions. If you are comfortable putting your picture up, I love it because then it feels less like I'm speaking into the void. But it's totally okay if you don't want to put it up. And it's also okay if you turn it on and turn it off and turn it on and turn it off and turn it on and turn it off. That kind of thing doesn't bother me at all. So just do you. But yeah, I like to see just a couple of people is nice. Hi. Um, so also my contact information is here. So my email address, my Pinterest account, and my LiveBinder resource. This is the same information I've given at every other session. These are my Pinterest, I think of as my more of my kind of student-based resource. So if you're looking for a social and emotional skill or strategy for students, I would check out the Pinterest. There's a lot there that's pre-K through 12th grade and beyond. And then my LiveBinder resource, I consider more of my professional resource. I have all of the PowerPoint slides that you'll see today and all of the other ones that we've done. Um, Links to academic research, links to websites. And then I have a lot of my own like specific strategies that I frequently recommend. So that's kind of more like the tight 20 of strategies that I do is on the live binder. So those are available to you for forever for free. I will never change the links. I will never change the access key, but I do frequently add things to it. I just added stuff to it this afternoon. So you can keep checking it out, keep coming back. I don't want you to have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to trying to find resources for this work. So, my name's Missy McClain. I should have started there. If you weren't a part of my sessions earlier, we did 3 sessions already. We did an introduction to trauma, managing trauma in the classroom, and then also our self-care piece. So now we are moving into our developmental assets piece, and then we have one more session in February. So I hope you can join us for February. This again is my family. My kids are looking so different this year because they're significantly growing. My daughter is 15, and she is in the ninth grade, and we just thankfully before the snow, we got a winter formal dress. So that was a bonus. My son, Cameron, I don't know what he's going to do. So many basketball games of his have been now canceled. And I think he's going to be playing middle school basketball in 7th grade for like the next 4 years. If we ever get to play on the court again. So my husband and I, we've been together for a really long time. And he, like my children, is the ultimate of guinea pigs for all of this work that I do. So I always like to have a picture of them because I talk about them a lot. So, um, I'm going to let Beth speak for a second because I know that she has this for the funding.
Yeah, many of you have heard this before, but we have a grant from the U.S. Department of Justice that has a focus on preventing school violence. And so we have used those funds to provide training like this to support mental health and well-being in schools. And so that's how we're able to offer this. And if you are interested, you can follow us on Instagram. We are C2S2BGSU. That's where we post all of our trainings and offerings so you can see what we have coming up. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Beth. I'm actually not sure. I know Angie asked in the chat how to change your name. I actually don't know how to do that. Beth, do you?
Yeah, if you click on the 3 little dots that are kind of up in your Zoom box, you should get an option for rename.
All right.
Oh,
Hopefully that works.
thanks.
Okay. I would say if not, maybe just put your full name in the chat so then Beth can have that. I think that would probably be a good secondary option. Um, Okay, so as I said, we are coming back today and we're coming out strong. And this actually is one of my favorite things to talk about. Oh, there's a little fuzzy. It's one of my favorite things to talk about because I think that, I don't know, I feel like I say that every time, but I truly do feel that way about this, where, I think that a lot of my work, a lot of the stuff that I train about is really looking from a deficit focus, right? Of what risks do we encounter if we, are faced with this trauma or if we have this developmental difference. And I think that why I love this so much is because it's looking at it from the complete opposite direction, where this is research that came out of the Search Institute. So the Search Institute is a an agency in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and around the same time that folks were doing research on the adverse childhood experiences, those ACE scores, they this early 1990s, the Search Institute was like, okay, so we're seeing all this research on like what we want to make sure we're protecting kids from, but like, what do kids need? What do they need to be happy, healthy, thriving adults? And that was really what started their quest. And they started asking around to a bunch of people. Millions and millions since the early 1990s have participated in this research. It's actually been done all over the world, but the research, the data that I'm going to give you today is just their most recent sample, which was 86,000 students representing each of the contiguous United States. So this isn't just like 100 kids in Minneapolis, right? Like this is a really expansive study, which is so cool because, as I said, it's really looking for what do kids need to survive and thrive. And when they were kind of trying to figure out what thriving meant, like what does that even mean as an adult, they weren't looking at, like third grade reading guarantee. They weren't looking at, anything that we would look at, SAT scores, like none of that kind of thing. They were looking at a much broader sense of thriving, things like leadership as adults and valuing community and positive, healthy friendships and relationships, right? All of these things that when we see it in an adult, we're like, yeah, they've got the life, right? They're doing a lot of really great things and have a lot of really great things in their lives. And that's what the Search Institute was looking for. And so through this process, they found they found a list of 40 things. So 40 is a huge number. That's a lot of things. And I mean, it's kind of cool though, because I think you go on my live binder, you go on my Pinterest, I have it on both places. You can print off like just on all of them on one side of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, right? Like all 40 right there on one side. And I like it to think of it that way because, like, I don't know, you know how like people say, um, oh, they didn't give me an instruction booklet when I had this baby, right? Well, now you can just say, oh, you just didn't get yours. Here it is. Here's the instruction book that you can take and use to help you raise thriving adults. So I think that's a pretty awesome thing that we have this information that we can share with the families that we work with and with the school staff that we work with as well. So I am going to like Ferris Bueller our way through all 40 of them. I apologize for that. I just think it's great to make sure that I give voice to each and every one of them. I think a lot of these are going to feel like common sense to you. But I think that it's a pretty exciting list. Plop into the chat if you have any experience with if you know about the assets already. Let's see if anybody knows. All right, not really. Okay, well, that's super good. I'm excited. I'd love to be able to share them with you. I'm such a nerd about this stuff. So there are 40 things. So Oh, good. Another one of my trainings. Thanks, Stacy. So these 40 things, they have organized this. The Search Institute is they have organized this into two halves, right? So there are 20 assets that are considered external assets, things that we get as children from the outside, right? So they have to be given to us. They have to be a part and present in our lives. Then there are 20 assets that are considered internal assets, things that grow from within, right? That idea that yes, I need support from adults in my life um to grow that skill, but it's not something I can just be given. It has to be something that I grow over time. And then they further, so 20 and 20, and then they further organize that into four categories each on each side. So, eight total categories. I am going to, as I said, go through these like ad nauseum. So I apologize, but I will first go over the outside supports and then the inside supports. I take longer on the outside supports than I do on the internal ones. But we'll go ahead and get started. There are so many words on this. Next slide. Remember that you can take a picture of this. You can pull up my live binder and the form is right there as well. But you don't feel like you have to write it all down. Even the PowerPoint slide itself is available on the live binder. Okay. So, like I said, there's a lot. So our first category is the category of support. Now, reminding you that these are our external assets, the things that we get from the outside of our own presence, right? So, family support is number one. I gotta have somebody at home that cares about me, that cares about what I'm doing, that knows where I'm going, knows where I am, knows what I'm doing, right? That family support. And I also, with number two, need positive family communication, meaning that someone in my home I'm able to communicate with in a way that's positive and enjoyable. It's not just all slamming doors and screaming, right? The third one is other adult relationships. Other adult relationships is interesting. I think that recently, I don't know, over the last like decade or so, we have gotten a little nervous about our kids getting connected with with other adults outside of our family. We're a little nervous about what that relationship might look like with that teacher or with that coach or with that religious leader. Um, but these relationships are so vital to that thriving piece. And I know that each and every one of you can probably look back and recognize that there is at least one adult that you could pinpoint in your life that you weren't related to that had a huge impact on who you are today, right? For me, many of which were teachers and coaches for me. Um, I understand we want our kids to be safe and I'm all for safety precautions being put in play, but I don't want to forego these relationships in the name of safety. I want to make sure that kids are still getting these really important other adult relationships. All right. I always say that number four is my neighbor's least favorite of all of the assets because this asset makes me that crazy neighbor who, like, you're desperately trying to get the garage door down in time before I like come and open your door and like let your kids out to play with my kids and then sit there and talk to you for like 45 minutes. Yeah, that's the kind of neighbor I am. But man, I didn't know what I was missing. I imagine many of
Hi,
you guys.
I have a pickup for my mom. Her
Oh,
birthday is 7/29/43.
hi. All right. Okay. Um, what was I saying? Neighborhood. I didn't know what I was missing, right? That a lot of you guys probably grew up in close-knit, tight neighborhoods. I didn't have that as a kid. And now having it as an adult is like so awesome, right? Getting to see my kids grow up with other children and have trusted adults that all live within a short walking distance where they can get help if they need, where they can get support if they need, plus a variety of expertise and interests of adults where, our kids are really getting this huge eclectic exposure, which is so fun. And of course, for our neighborhood, it's led to things like, Halloween parties and July 4th bike parades and Christmas caroling, which is super awesome. So caring neighborhood's one of those great ones. All right, as we move into number five, this is caring school climate. So this is, for me as a young person, I can walk into my school building and I know that these people here, these grown-ups, they care about me and they care about me more than just like my score on the test. They care about me more than the score on the scoreboard Friday night. They care about me more than my behaviors. They see me as a whole person and they care about me. As we move into parent involvement in schooling, this is a pretty big spectrum. I think that sometimes we, as educators and people who work in schools, we get a little bummed. I know I do that, because of the work that I do, I'm very rarely available to be like a class mom or to be the chaperone on the field trip. And I always have to walk by. Think of it as like the table of shame at teacher conference night when I like walk by and have to just walk up by all the sign up sheets because I can't sign up for anything. It's like, okay, I can buy napkins. Like I can buy and send anything. And so sometimes we might feel like we're not as involved in schooling as we'd like to be, but there is a huge spectrum in involvement in our kids' schooling. And yes, of course, there are the people who are the PTO presidents and the ones who are always volunteering at the school. But there are those of us who are deeply involved in our kids' education. We're the parents who every night we're saying, hey, let's go through your bag. Let's go through your folder. What are you working on? Do you have a test tomorrow? Let's study. Let's make flashcards. Let's read. All of those things are a huge part of parent involvement in schooling. So I don't want you to feel like if you are like me, because we work in schools, unable to do kind of that PTO president thing, that does not mean that our kids not getting this asset because they are. That parent involvement in schooling is very important. As we move into our next category, this category is called empowerment. And it starts with community that values children. So that means that we as a community, we value our young people and we're not just waiting for them to grow up, right? Like we see them as a unique and important part of our community as they are right now. And I think about this always reminds me of so I live in Kent, and I live on the opposite side of the river from the university. And I live within a mile of our school district, and we are within a mile walking district. So there's tons of kids walking, middle and high school. So it's, I don't know, 11 years old to 18 that are walking in my neighborhood and extended out every day. And there's this gas station that is near my house. And on the door of the gas station, there's this sign, and the sign says, only two students in at a time. Leave your bags at the counter. And I'm like, this is what 11 to 18-year-olds are thinking that we think about them, right? That like, what do they think? And how do they see their perception of, I guess, what we think of them, right? And I think that thing that kind of just made me a little sad. So I took a picture of the door, and then the guy came out and was like, "Why are you taking a picture of my door?" And I was like, "Nothing," and I ran away. But like, how could we do things in a way that help children really recognize how valued they are as a part of our community? And not just that we're not waiting for them to grow up, but as we move into our next one, that we see them as unique resources, that they have something to offer our community that other generations don't. I see this a ton in schools, right? I see like seniors doing the thing where they like will teach senior citizens how to use their phones or tablets. I've seen all kinds of different ways that we are having kids be those resources, right? When we have kids doing mentoring, when we have kids doing coaching of youth programming. I also love randomly, I was a school had brought me in for a parent teacher conference night, and they had set up as a part of their conferences, they had like these stations of for parents if they wanted more information about, moving to high school, what if they could talk to someone if they had wanted to talk to someone about social and emotional learning. That was what I was there for. And really the only place that was busy, it wasn't my space. It was the place right across the way from me because it was a handful of middle school students that were teaching parents how to play Fortnite. And I just thought that was like the coolest thing because these parents were having so much fun with their kids and laughing and learning about, the video game world, which I thought was super cool. So not only are we valuing our young people, but we also see them as unique resources. And then as we move to the next one, we're talking about service to others. And service to others is great and the service is important, but the big thing here that I think is kind of gets us tripped up here is that kids need to know that they're doing service for others. And I know that sounds weird, but I did this a research study with one school. It was a religious elementary school, pre-K through second grade, very little. And so basically this research was saying, okay, where are your students' strengths per these 40 and where are their gaps per these 40, right? And so one of the gaps that came up for their building was service to others. And this is a Catholic school and the principal was like, I don't understand that. It's a huge part of our mission. It's something that we have a focus on all the time. And so that led us to kind of start asking different questions of the kiddos. And what we found out was that the kiddos weren't making a leap that we thought they were making. They thought they were bringing in canned goods so that they could wear jeans on Friday. They weren't making that leap to what that canned good was going to go do and how that was going to help the community as a whole, which was great that we found that out because then it was allowed to, then we were able to bring in the food bank, talk about food insecurity with these itty bitties, right? And it was just awesome because it allowed us to kind of recognize, well, maybe they weren't taking that leap that we thought they were. Um, Also, I think sometimes when we are, especially with older kids, high school in particular, I feel like this comes up a lot, where when we are doing our philanthropic events, they tend to tie around a competitive thing, like ninth grade versus 11th grade, or, like there's some sort of competition involved, which I think is great and gets kids amped. But also, I think sometimes we get so focused in on the competition part that we kind of lose track of the philanthropic part. So just remembering that when we are trying to do this philanthropy piece, we want to make sure that we're putting the real emphasis on that service because that's actually the asset that a kid needs. Oh, and then kids need to feel safe. They need to feel safe at home. They need to feel safe in their neighborhoods and they need to feel safe at school. And as we move into expectations, they need to have expectations and boundaries at home, in their neighborhoods, and at school. So ideally, these expectations and boundaries would be similar across environments. Now, this doesn't mean that we share the same values or that we have to share the same religion or that we have to share the same political party. It just means that there are boundaries and expectations that exist that are universal. I'm sure that you guys have had that student where you're working with a student and they're like, well, I'm allowed to swear at home. It makes it a little more difficult if I'm allowed to swear at home, but not at school, right? Am I allowed to stand on a chair in my own in my own kitchen and, throw something at someone? If I am, that's probably going to make things a little difficult for that rule at home. So I really like thinking about how we can create those spaces in which those are similar across environments. Our next one is adult role models. So this moves beyond kind of that building of a positive relationship with someone. And this moves into like, oh, I know Mr. Johnson and he's a pilot and I'm super interested in aviation. And I wonder if maybe he could sit down and have a meeting with me. Maybe I could shadow him. All of that is that adult role modeling stuff that we do. The next one is positive peer relationships. So when I think of positive peer relationships, I think of like Neville Longbottom, and I think of Jiminy Cricket, right? These are two real famous positive peers that we have in our kind of zeitgeist of information. But this is that kid that's with the group saying, "Hmm, maybe we should get focused back onto this work." Or maybe we shouldn't flush all those paper towels down the toilet, right? It's that person that's in your life that's just that little Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder saying, "Oh, let's check on this and see if this is what we want." I find that in my life, there are many a times where I have had to be the Jiminy Cricket, and there are also many a times of my life that I have needed the Jiminy Cricket. So I think that this is a fluid place. I don't think anyone is all positive or not. But I like it when we see it in schools, and we can definitely positively reinforce it when we see kids giving each other this positive peer reinforcement. All right, our next one is high expectations. So, high expectations, this is actually coupled with high support. So, when we're looking at high expectations, I think of it like a quadrant, right? So, we don't want to have high expectations and low support. Maybe you've seen this with like a parent who says oh well, why is my child failing math, and what are we supposed to be doing? And then we say, well, I mean, have you been checking progress book? They're missing some assignments, they don't seem to have been studying, have you tried doing that? And the parent says, well, I thought you were supposed to be the math teacher, so why do I have to do this work? Right? That's high expectations, low support. We don't want that, right? We also don't want low expectations, low support. I see that sometimes with students, particularly students who have difficult behaviors. Sometimes I'll hear staff members say things like, oh, well, we're just waiting for placement in an alternative environment. For me, that kind of screams, we're really don't expect much of this kiddo and we're kind of done trying, right? Low expectation, low support. We don't want that either. We also don't want low expectations, high support. I see this all the time, right? On my kids' soccer team, there's a mom on the sideline that's like, oh my gosh, you're going to get the biggest scholarship and you're going to be the next Missy. It's going to be so great. Meanwhile, the kid's like playing in the grass, right? You know what I'm talking about. Or like, I think about my son when he was in first grade. We did Cub Scouts, and it was the Pinewood Derby. If you're not familiar, the Pinewood Derby and Cub Scouts, it's just like making a little wooden car with wheels, and then they race them down like a big Hot Wheels track. And it's a big thing that all Cub Scouts do. And so my son's 6, and they're supposed to, with the help of an adult, be pretty much making this on their own, right? So my husband helped him, cut the wood and get the tires and everything going. But then my son painted it all black and he put stickers on it because he's 6, right? I showed up to this Pinewood Derby event with all of these other Cub Scout families. And I'm not kidding you, there were first grade families there. This kid I wouldn't have been surprised if it was a 2 scale model of the Titanic on wheels. It was like little smokestacks, like a perfect gold line across it. Like a 6-year-old did not make that, right? That's low expectations, high support. We don't want that either. What we want is high expectations and high support. I know that you can stretch. I know you can reach your goals. I know that you could probably even get more than what you think you can get. And I'm going to be here all along the way, providing you resources, tools, scaffolding, and heck, just being your cheerleader throughout, right? High expectations, high support is what kids need. All right. So then as we move into our fourth category, This is our constructive use of time. And I like to think of the theme of this category is balance, right? So our first one is creative activities. So this is all of the arts that you can think of. So fine arts, painting, sculpting, drawing, dramatic arts like drama, musical theater, musical arts, orchestra, band, choir, dance, all of those creative activities create are mentioned or are part of this piece. So what the Search Institute found was that kids need at least 2 hours per week participating in some type of creative activity of their choice. So whatever that creative activity is, they just have to have exposure to it 2 hours per week. This does not have to be outside of school. So if our art classes involve choir classes, orchestra classes, band classes, these are all involved in this creative activities and meet that goal. I do know though that as budgets change, that we go to those creative activity specials less and less frequently. And I also know that as children get older, they begin to self-withdraw from these activities, right? Where maybe they'll say, "Oh, I'd love to take that art class, but I have to make room for my AP English class," right? And so they're self-withdrawing from the creative activities that maybe they enjoyed early on. But kids need 2 hours per week. They also need 2 hours per week of youth programming. So this is everything else. All of your athletics, every sport, all of the like student council, Spanish club, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, like all of that stuff is in youth programming, after school programming, like all of that is there. Again, it doesn't have to be outside of school. So recess and gym count here. But just as I said before, we know that those are things that tend to fade out as kids get older, or children self remove from those things. But kids need 2 hours per week. So when we move into religious community, there's some research on the spirituality of it, but the biggest thing that comes out of religious community is actually intergenerational relationships outside of my family. So that means I know Mrs. Jones, and she's the same age as my grandma, and she's my Sunday school teacher, and we have a relationship. Intergenerational relationships outside of my family, right? Those just often happen in religious communities. What I like knowing about that is that if I'm working with a family who maybe their family doesn't personally ascribe to a religious community, or if their religious community isn't regionally available, that they actually can still meet this asset, right? Because they can get involved in other types of intergenerational organizations like JCs or Kiwanis or like Moose Clubs and things like that, where there are different age groups of people all along. All right, then the last one of our external is time at home. Now, this one was a really hard sell for a long time, and then it was a really easy sell for a couple of years, and now it's a really hard sell again, right? Kids need to be at home 2 nights per week without anything particular to do but spend time with family. 2 nights per week. I know that that's hard in the busy schedules that we have now. But that stability and that calm allows for that growth, and not to mention that connection with the family. All right. So, as I said, I go through the internal assets a lot quicker. So, as we move through these, remember these are assets that have to be built from the inside. So, of course, I need support from the outside to grow these, but they can't just be given to me. So, they grow over time. So, in my commitment to learning category is achievement motivation. This is just that internal feeling of like, yeah, I want to score a little bit higher on my test this week. I want to shave a second or two off my time at the meet this week, or I want to show my art in the art show at the end of the school year, right? That's that achievement motivation piece. school engagement. So this moves beyond, I just feel like the people around me care about me at school, but this moves into like, yeah, okay, like I'll join the Spanish club. Yeah, I think I could do student council, right? They're starting to get engaged in the school community itself. Even things like wanting to help pass out graded papers and, wanting to be the line leader. Like those things are school engagement pieces as well. The next one is bonding to school. So this moves beyond um these people care about me and sure I'll join the student council. And this moves into like I'm a bulldog, right? And these are those kiddos who have a real strong connection to the school community itself. So these are our kids who are going to all the games, who have super school spirit, right? Those are kids who are really invested in the in the community at school. And our last one in commitment to learning is reading for pleasure. These are just kids who are reading stuff because they like to, not for any other reason other than that it's fun. So as we go into positive values, we want kids who are caring, kids who understand equality and social justice, kids who have integrity, kids who are honest, even when it's difficult to be honest, kids who are able to take responsibilities and uphold those responsibilities. And then kids who understand a healthy lifestyle. The healthy lifestyle piece is kind of just like the knowing that I shouldn't vape. Like I know that if I eat the chicken nuggets, I should also eat the apple slices, right? I know that there is a healthy and unhealthy way to be. So then as we move into social skills, our top one here is planning and decision making. I can make a plan and then make decisions to get that plan met. Interpersonal skills, when I think of interpersonal skills, I think of ages and group size. So like interpersonal skills means that I can work with and be successful with people my own age, kids who are younger than me, kids who are older than me, and adults and older adults, right? And then also group size. So I can work well one-to-one. I can work well in small group environments, and I can work well in larger group environments. So interpersonal, I think of as age and group size. And then as we add in cultural competency or cultural awareness, that adds in all the other stuff, all the racial ethnic differences, all of the socioeconomic differences, all of the ability differences, all of that is all in this part. So I can work with people from any background in any space and feel comfortable and successful. All right. As we move into resistance skills, this is now moving beyond I know I shouldn't vape and moves into when presented with the opportunity to vape, I actually have the skill set to say no. That's that resistance skill. Positive conflict resolution. This is my ability to solve issues and problems in my life without reverting to physical or verbal aggression. Then, as we move into our positive identity piece, our first one there is personal power. I think about personal power all the time because kids they need to have power over something in their lives, whether it be, what they wear or what lunch choice they pick or what sports they get to play or electives they get to take. That personal power is very important for young people. And it always makes me laugh because from a very young age, I decided with my first child, that the personal power I would allow my kids to have is that they can wear whatever they want. And it's bit me. It's come back to bite me quite a few times. There's been some times that are questionable of what are you wearing? There was just recently my son, he like we went somewhere and he was like dressed like Adam Sandler. He was wearing two different shoes. He was like, I was like, what are we doing? Right. So I share that with you because I just want you to know that if you see me in public and my children are with me and they look crazy, just remember like I'm a good parent and that's their personal power. Um so the next one here is self-esteem. This one makes me think of my mom. When I was a kid, my mom used to say, Missy, you don't want to have low self-esteem, but you also don't want to have high self-esteem. What you want is accurate self-esteem. I feel like that's pretty good advice, right? The older I get, it feels like better advice, right? And I don't know. Have you guys ever known anybody who has like really high self-esteem about something and they shouldn't? Right? It starts to get in the way of interpersonal skills. It starts to get in the way of my ability to work with other people. It gets in the way of some of these other assets. So it is totally okay for us as humans and as grown-ups in the lives of children to talk about the things that we are good at and the things that we're not so good at. Because what's wonderful about us as a human species is that we are a community-based species, meaning that we seek out community members evolutionarily that will fill in the gaps of our own skill set. So I know that without even knowing any of you guys, I know that in your life you have someone, partner, friend, coworker, supervisor, someone in your life that's like super good at all the things that you're not really good at. And you guys are really best great friends and or great work together, partners, right? And this is something that is good for us, right? That's what we do as humans. It's not an accident. It's actually something that we do because we are a community-based system. So it's okay to have conversations about what I'm good at and what I'm not so good at, because it can help illuminate that conversation of how we begin to seek out community members who can fill in those gaps, because not every person is going to be good at everything. All right. Next is sense of purpose. I don't care if you're 4, if you're 14, if you're 40, if you're 400, you got to feel like you're waking up and this is all for a reason, right? There is a purpose to the things that I'm doing. There's a purpose to the work that's in front of me. And then lastly, kids need to be able to see a future for themselves, and that future is bright. They can see that there is something good coming just around the bend for them. So as I said, those are the 40 things, and I Ferris Buellered our way through them. Thank you for your patience and me going through all 40. But like I said, I just wanted to give voice to each and every one of them, because I think that when you first look at them, as I said already, they seem like common sense. Like, of course, kids need those things. But I don't think that it would surprise this group to find out that this just really isn't common sense for a lot of kids, right? Now, this is the research, just the most recent sample that they had. Now, it almost always sits somewhere close to 50-50%. This is the first year I've ever seen it exactly half, which is kind of creepy to me. But it usually is about 50-50, where we have 50% of kids in the United States that have between 20 and 40, and 50% that have between 1 and 20. So that means that half of our students are not getting even half of what they need. And I think that when you look at the little navy blue pie of this would be the area, I think it's the navy blue one. Sorry, I can't see the whole page. Um, Yes, the navy blue one. This is the area that the Search Institute calls like the thriving zone. These are the kiddos who have 31 to 40 assets. That's 11% of kids. That's not enough, right? That's not enough, especially as they started doing more research and finding that, hey, the less of these a child has, the more likely they're falling into those risk factors that we are continuously trying to research and continuously trying to prevent. Things like alcohol use, drug use, violence, all kinds of things that go into these risks. And we can see over and over and over again that the assets can be a protective factor against these things. And what I love to think about with this slide is because like it's super overwhelming. Like 40 things is a lot of things, right? Like, and I've got maybe 175 kids coming through my my door every day. 40 things, like, are we serious, right? And a lot of those things I might not have any control over. Like, I can't control how safe your neighborhood is, right? And so it can feel a little overwhelming or daunting to kind of look at what we can do with these assets. And that's what I like to look at this slide, because to me, it helps me recognize something that's a really big deal. And that is, let's say that a child walks into our classroom and they identify with 9 of those assets. They have 9 that they feel really strongly, yes, those 9 things are a part of either me or my life. Um, Well, that means that maybe I could find them that book series that helps them fall in love with reading. Maybe I could find them that one club that's like the right niche for them to help them feel a little bit more engaged at school. Maybe I could help them through lesson planning, the work of making a plan and then making choices to get that plan accomplished. We could work on that. And so now, if I've got a kid who came in at 9, he's now walking away with 12. And when you look at the statistics, I have now cut his risk in half across the board, just pushing him from that 1 to 10 zone into the 11 to 20 zone. I think that's absolutely incredible because 40 is a lot of things, and many of them we don't have control over. But there are so many little things that we could do every day that could make a huge impact on the trajectory of that child's life. And so, what I like to really focus on is what good comes out of this, right? Again and again, the Search Institute finds that the higher that this person's uh, assets are, the more likely they are to have those successful, thriving key indicators, right? Succeeding in school, community service, diversity, physical health, leadership, danger resistance, adversity resistance, right? These are huge things that us as adults really need. And so the more assets a child has, the more likely they will be able to accomplish that. The one I really want to focus on here on this page is just this succeeds in school, that very first one there. Because I think it's really interesting when you look at the difference between 0 to 10 at 8% and 31 to 40 at 58%. That's a 50% increase in their success at school that has nothing to do with their intelligence or their motivation. It has everything to do with the social and emotional supports they have at home and the social and emotional supports that they are growing from within. I think that's just amazing to remember because I think sometimes, we mistakenly believe that maybe children don't want to do things or that they can't do things when maybe it's that there's just not the supports at home for them like there are for other kids. So I think about my own experience a lot. I've probably already shared about my own experience a little bit. But so when I was in 6th grade, this was the first time that I received an F on my report card. And it wasn't the only one, and I had many others. I mean, I had an F in math every year after that. You always think I'm smart. Oh, I don't know my multiplication tables, but I think back on that time, especially in 6th grade, I remember how much like personal shame I had around that experience, that I felt very irresponsible. Like I knew in some ways that I could do it. I did feel kind of dumb, but mostly I just felt like a flake. I felt like I was an irresponsible kid. And I have felt that way for years and years, all the way into even doing this work. I still felt that internal shame. And it wasn't until my daughter was in 6th grade and I started to see how much of a child I was in 6th grade. I didn't recognize it in my own personal history memory, right? That I was so young. But when I could see it in my daughter, that I'm still having to remind her to brush her teeth and I'm still having to remind her to, do everything. There was no one there for me when I was a kid that was telling me to check for my homework or to go through my flashcards. So I harbored all of this personal shame around that when really those other kids may have had just a ton more support than I had. And I think we always need to remember that it might not be that they can't do it or they don't want to do it. It might just be that the support levels are different. So at this point, I think that it's important for us to kind of say, okay, so the Search Institute said, here's what kids need to succeed and thrive, right? Here are the things that they need. And then they also found that way too many kids don't have near enough, right? Or they don't have near what they need. And so the Search Institute was like, okay, well, what are we going to do? What do we do as parents, as community members, as teachers? Like, what do we do to ensure that this is something that is positive, and helpful in growing these assets for kids in all different types of environments? And so they've gone in lots of directions with the Search Institute. Their website's on my Live Finder, and they have like full websites for school, full websites for community, full websites for parents. So they've really done a lot of work in building this up. But one of the big important things to remember is that this is not a one size fits all kind of thing. I think that sometimes, we in education are a little type A. So it's nice to like have like the lesson plan and these four objectives and, check, check, check. But this work isn't really like that. This work is going to look different for every kid that I'm working with, and maybe even from day to day or week to week or year to year with the same kid, right? That it's not always going to look the same. But even though it doesn't look the same, it doesn't mean that it is willy-nilly, right? Just because we don't have like the specific outline or the specific objective doesn't mean that we have to kind of go about this in a way that feels very undirected, right? We want to make sure that we are doing this in a targeted way. It's very much on purpose and intentional. So, what I want you guys to do, I'm just going to give you a few minutes, like 2 minutes. But I want you to think, because we're going to do a couple different ways of beginning to kind of target in on this. So, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to, if you've got a paper, that's fine. If not, that's okay too. I'm not going to grade it. Um, but I like just from memory, writing down any of the students that you can remember from your classroom. Now, whether that is your third grade classroom right now, or maybe that's your first, second, third period classrooms, just start writing down names without looking at a class list of every child that you can remember and see if you can find or kind of detail out one or two things that they like or that they're interested in outside of school. Not like sports, but like outside of academics, rather. All right, so I'm going to give you guys a minute or two. Let's start listing off kids. Nice. Sorry, I was reading in the chat. I don't even know someone who does cosplay costumes. It's awesome. I'll give you like another 30 seconds. Just kind of think about it. All right, let's come back. Oh, Stacy, it's yikes for all of us, I think, right? I think that it's always so easy for like us to get like the first couple, right? We're like, okay, these ones, yeah, 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 right? And then it's like, oh man, because then year after year they blur and it just gets hard. I mean, there's a lot of kids that come into our space, and there's a lot of stuff that we have to do with those said kids, right? And a lot of stuff we have to get out of them that can be hard to be able to even have conversations that are outside of academics. And this certainly isn't an activity to make you feel like you're not doing enough work, because you are. You're doing a ton of work. And this list will show how much work you're doing. You really, truly are building, I know, great relationships with so many kids. The reason I like making this list, though, is because for me, it helps me pull away, because I think sometimes I'm like, okay, I am building relationships with people. Like, stop saying that, right? Because you guys are. But it helps me start to recognize, okay, these kids, I don't have to worry about. I'm already establishing relationships here, right? So, Missy, Scott, Bree, Vince, Dominic, Etta, we've got a pretty good thing going. But then as I put B down, started to get a little iffy. Like, I feel like she's into art, and I feel like Aiden's into football and basketball, but that also just could have been his brother. Uh um and then I know a couple of kids, their names, but I don't know really anything about them. And I also know that there's a couple of kids who, just off the top of my head without looking at the class list, I don't remember their names. And it is what it is. That's how our human brains work. But why I like making this list is I think that line, right? That line that I put there in between Etta and B, this is where I start. This is my starting line, that I don't have to be thinking, oh my gosh, I have to make relationships with 30 kids or with 130 kids, right? That I can look at my list and in a much smaller way, because I'm already doing the work with most of the kids. It's just this group that needs just a little bit of extra tap in, right? And that feels so much more realistic than having to like put and build this great relationship with a million people all at the same time. It's just not possible. And what's really amazing is that from this point, right, my list down below B, I can start to look at as a whole, as a school building, because I think about our students' teams as pre-K through 12th grade teachers are that child's team, right? That child's team is all of those teachers combined. And so when I look at that team as a whole, um, there might be other adults in the space. Maybe I don't have a great relationship with B, but maybe someone else on our team does have a great relationship with B. And so now I don't, that's okay too. She doesn't need a relationship with everyone, right? But she does need a relationship, and a good one. And so how can we be intentional about that? So with schools, what I've done is I've had them put up the entire roster, whether it's uh in person. I've done this with stickers. I've done this also with Google Docs and just like check marks. And oh, Sarah, yes, she said relationship mapping in your school. Yes. So I definitely know schools have done this, right? But it gives me an opportunity to kind of look and kind of cross compare my list, right? So my personal class list that I'm looking at now versus the list of students that may have relationships with others. So how I typically do this is I give folks three stickers, and they can put a sticker by three kids that they have a great relationship with, and they have to put stickers by the child regardless of how many stickers they already have. So what you find is this starts to pull out this way, where we'll have some kids that have multiple stickers and some kids that have none. Sometimes when we're making relationships with kids, we're really leaning on the organic nature of relationship building with kids, and we make great relationships with kids who are already good at building relationships. And so kids like Etta are getting one, two, three, right? They're getting a lot of relationships. But now I can look back and look at my list. So on my list, when I go back, I wanted to go back. So I had B, Aiden, Kaylee, Addie, and Gemma. So now let me go onto the school list, and I can say, okay, so I had Addie, but Addie has two adults that she's really close with. So maybe I could actually focus in on B and Gemma because they were on my list and I see that they don't have any hearts. So maybe I actually could become that heart this year for just those two kids, right? That way, as a huge team, we can all take all of those kids who don't have stickers and we can divvy them up. And now we only have to do this work very well with a couple of kids. That's just so much more reasonable, and it makes so much more sense to do this in this very purposeful way, right? Really looking at who needs those relationships. Now, of course, this is make new friends, keep the old one silver, one gold, right? We're going to keep all the great relationships that we've already built with all those great students that we teach now or that we've taught in the past. But this just helps us give a focus to where we can put in just a couple of extra opportune times. And so when the Search Institute said this, okay, so we're going to do this on purpose, we're going to be intentional with what we're going to do to build these strategies. But now, how? Right? How are we going to do this work? And so over the years, they have really developed a three-prong approach. They are currently working on the fourth prong. So I don't know, maybe in a couple years graph will look different. But right now it's a three-prong approach, and it really is focused in on building resiliency for children, building developmental relationships with children, and encouraging and supporting student spark. So I'm going to talk about each of these three things just briefly on the developmental relationship piece, though. So I will go over that first because my whole next session is about this part, the developmental relationship piece. So I'm just today going to finish up the resiliency and the sparks piece, just so that when we come together in February, we can really get some good information or get some good conversations with this developmental relationships piece. And it really is about making that plan for those one or two kids so that they have each of these five evidence-based relationship components. So I'm not going to talk any more about that because I'm going to talk a lot about it the next time we're together. So I'm just going to move forward and start talking about resilience. So resilience is one of those funny words that I feel like people say all the time and like yeah, we'll just like help them build resilience. But it's like such a nebulous word, like it's so big. And it's like okay, like it feels really non-specific, right? And sometimes it can even feel like what does that even mean, right? Or it feels like something that like a counselor has to do. But when we really look at what resiliency is, it's really just all the things that we as humans do to help us get through hard stuff, right? To help us feel good about ourselves when we've persevered through challenges, right? All of those things that we do as humans, there are literally thousands of different types of resiliencies out there that we can improve upon. And so I'm just going to talk about a couple of common ones, but ways that I know you guys are probably already teaching and talking about with students every day. But just to start, I like thinking about looking at it from like kind of a whole perspective. I like looking at recognizing that it's a bunch of different things put together. That like resilience isn't one thing, right? It's a whole map of a whole bunch of different things put together. And each one of these categories could be broken down to another 40 categories each, right? That if I'm going to help a child build resilience, it doesn't mean that I'm going to do this one thing. It means that I'm going to do a lot of little things over a lot of time, right? It's not it's you know, kind of the same as saying like how we're going to teach kids to read, right? It's not just like one thing. It's a big thing. And it's over time, and it's not something that we have to get right away. It's something that we can keep working on as we're working with young people. But I like thinking about it in these ways so we've got, how many we got here? I don't know, 10 categories there. And recognizing that these are things that grow with us as we grow. And so even as adults, we will experience new resiliency skills all the way into our elderly years. We build new skills, particularly as new experiences happen to us, right? So, oh, well, I've never been in a car accident on the highway before. I guess now I have to cope with that, right? And now I'm building and strengthening different types of resiliency skills that I didn't have before, right? Or maybe there's a loss of a family member and I'm having to build resiliency skills that I haven't had to before, right? So this is not, there's never going to be an end point here. This is all of a journey for all of us, for all of our lives. And I think that kind of looking at it from the get-go and just being proactive with students and letting them know that, hey, things are going to go down, right? This is never going to go the way we want it to go, right? It's sometimes going to mess up. And what could be the ways that it could mess up? And how could we proactively kind of address those things? So, I think about goal setting. So there's a type of goal setting. I'm not sure if I went over that with strategies with you. That's called WHOOP goal strategy, where it's like your wish, your outcome, obstacle, plan. And so what this is you get this wish. So like my wish is to finish the paperwork that I have to do early tomorrow morning. So let me think of the best possible outcome. The best possible outcome isn't, oh, well, it'll be done. The best possible outcome is I like imagine like my children's faces because I know they don't have school tomorrow. So if I can get all of the work that I need to get done tomorrow, like kind of early on, then I know that I'll be able to spend time with them in the later afternoon. And like, I'm just thinking about them, their faces and like, right? That to me is the best outcome possible, right? So now when I look at obstacles, what's going to get in the way of that? Well, I'm going to be tired, right? Maybe I don't have access to my internet. Or maybe what else could go wrong? It just takes more time than I thought it would. So then you actually you plan around the obstacles. So you don't set up a plan for how I'm going to get the work done. You set up a plan for how you'll address the obstacles if they appear. So okay, so if I find tomorrow I'm working on my stuff in the morning and I'm finding myself really tired, what I'm going to do is right away, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to go make myself a cup of coffee. I'm going to go stick my head out the window where it's real cold, take a nice big deep breath and say, get on with the day, right? And then if I don't have internet, ooh, that'll be a little bit tougher. However, there is a lot of stuff that I could do just on my desktop that would keep me caught up and put me further in advance. So I'll focus in on those things if my internet goes out. And then if I don't have enough time, okay, well, how could I pick out a time later in the evening so that I still get that thing in the afternoon with my kids, but also then kind of maybe grab another hour in the evening? That's the kind of proactive skill we can help with kids, right? That there are things that are going to happen, things that are going to get in the way, but proactively we can ensure that we're addressing those barriers. Other totally common things that we do as humans, right, for resiliencies, is choosing our battles, right? I know that you guys are teaching this lesson all the time, right? How we're not sweating the small stuff, how we're making sure that the thing that we're fighting for is worth fighting for, and that we're actually looking at the battles themselves, looking at how the outcome can affect us overall, and finding out which one of those is going to be the best to accomplish. Now, like I said, I know many of you guys are already doing these kinds of things. A lot of us are doing things with like small problem, big problem kind of conversations. But yeah, it's really just talking about let's choose those battles, right? very common resiliency. Another common resiliency that I love doing with kids is helping them begin to be able to visualize and manage their time. So, time management in itself is an executive function that really doesn't start until about 7 years old and on. But a lot of us don't ever get good at it. So, this is something we can always work on. But I really like doing this with young people in particular when we're having conversations. I bring this up a lot when people are talking about things like screen time, right? And we're trying to limit screen time, or, we have all these concerns about screen time. And for me, I think that if a child is old enough to have a phone, then they're old enough to begin having this kind of conversation, right? About how they want to spend their time and how their time is actually needs to be managed. And so it's just helping, oh, sorry. It's just helping them recognize that in during a weekday that there are only so many hours in a day, that they need to be sleeping 9 of them, that their lunch and dinner might take an hour, that school will be 7 hours. They might have an hour of homework, maybe 2 hours of soccer. There might be some chores. They might have to take a shower and brush their teeth. So then that leaves 2 hours of choice, right? And then that looks a little different on the weekends. We tend to have more choice hours. And then I have them from here just list off all the things that they like to do, because they like to do a lot of stuff. I know that we think young people only want to be on their phones and tablets, but most of them want to do a lot of different things, right? So yeah, they like playing video games. Sure, they like being on TikTok. Yeah, they like talking to their friends on FaceTime. Yes, they like basketball. They like running. They like doing drawing. They like cooking. They like all singing, playing the guitar, all of those things they can list off. Then when they start to look at those hours of time that they have in choice, right? And I'm looking at my list and I see I only have 2 hours of choice during my weekday. And this is my list of things that I love, that I want to make time for. How can I do that? And where will I put those things? So that they're starting to just have conversations within themselves about their value of time, right? Because I mean, we could all day long just tell them, well, you only get an hour on your phone, but that's not going to really build them a skill once they're grown up and someone's not saying that to them. So I think that this is a really great start in that resiliency building space for them. Um, we do tons of perseverance work with kids. I know that we do, especially a lot of this happens in like the productive math struggle, but just that just keep swimming mentality, right? You just keep pushing through, even if it doesn't quite feel like it's moving, right? You keep on keeping on. Um, and I think that many of us, as I said, we have this conversation with kids, and I think that we have to, in a lot of the work that we do as well, is increasing their perseverance, where sitting through these tests and sitting through the things that they have to do, and really strengthening their stamina in that way. Another thing that I really like is I have a strategy that I recommend a lot. This is it's a teacher had this where it was like if you know video games, so like in some video games like Fortnite or Minecraft, there's like a stamina bar, right? And like it'll say like you have like maybe five, it's full battery of stamina. And then as you like run, it like starts to go like now you have four, now you have three, and then you have to rest before you can, or so to recharge that battery of stamina. I saw a teacher once use that same concept for her educational stamina. And I thought that was so cool because she said, hey, so after lunch today, we are going to have like 3 bars of stamina needed. So let's, make sure at recess we're running around, we're getting tons of exercise, we're just getting all of that out because that's what recharges our battery, right? So that you have a full battery when you come in so that you can work with us. But I love that language because it's something that kids are super familiar with. But it helps with that concept of just kind of sticking through it and pushing through. Um, I think also being honest with ourselves is really important. I think that honesty is one of the assets that's on the list, but I think that this one's one that's really tough, and we've had conversations, I'm sure, with young people about having to be honest with ourselves about what might happen or what challenges we might face. And I think that recognizing that truth doesn't have to be a negative thing. The same is true, as I said, with my things we're good at and not so good at conversation, that there are things that I'm just not good at. I am not good at ice skating, and I have to be honest about it. I am not good at it. And I could have growth mindset and be all like, I'm just not good at it yet. But like, to be honest with myself, I feel like I'm pretty much done trying to ice skate, right? It's not something that I need as a human. I'm good, right? These are okay conversations for kids to have. And I think that sometimes we get overwhelmed at the like by the rule of law, that we kind of miss the spirit of it. So for example, as we're coming in towards, we're going into February, that I've been seeing so far, there are several kids that I've worked with that have just mountains of makeup work. Kids who just have paper upon paper upon paper upon paper, just homework, homework, homework that they're being asked to make up. Um, and I think that it's important for all of us to kind of really look at that and say, honestly, what do we want this child to learn and know? And would it be better served to try a different strategy, right? Because a child's very unlikely to make up that whole stack of work that they have that keeps. So, what can we do differently that can help them succeed? Because it's not my job to make sure that they get 55 papers, worksheets done, right? It's my job that they learn something in particular. And so we can be honest about what those challenges might be based on maybe where they are in that learning process. But I think to be able to think outside the box a little bit can be helpful. Um, so humor is another really, really popular resiliency that we use as humans. I think that, I don't know, sometimes people say, it's like a family like mine, where people like, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where it's like something super serious, like a funeral, like something like really serious, and you and your family are just like yucking it up, and you're like, man, if they heard us, they would think we were some kind of sick human beings. You're not sick human beings, you're human beings, because that's what we all do, right? As humans, we find humor to be able to survive some of those more difficult things that we experience every day. So we can practice this with kids, right? Of course, telling jokes and being kind of cheesy and generic is awesome and fun, but also that work that many of you are doing every day, that is that kind of like seeing the silly in yourself and your own mistakes, right? And like, oh my gosh, here we go again, right? And being able to kind of adjust and joke about those things so that you're modeling that for young people, and then also giving them an opportunity to do the same. So yes, humor is a very good place to start as well. Maintaining perspective. This one is a little bit more difficult for young people, but it is something that I see teachers consistently doing well. Really looking at, like I said before, that big problem versus little problem. What does this problem look like right now, and what will it look like a week from now? How will this feel a month from now? Having that perspective piece, I think, is really important. And also having the perspective from, and when we're trying to practice kind of that empathy as well, right? That perspective of, well, how would this feel if you were in this position, right? We do this a ton academically as well. So I think that this is one of those really big resiliencies that we're consistently working on. Um, One of the bigger ones that I wish we all did way more often was really model for young people that rest is not wasted time, right? That when we are resting, that our body is actually doing a ton of work. I think that sometimes because of the way that our schedules are, and we get so overbooked and so overpacked that kids, especially when they're not doing something, they feel like there's something wrong or something's off, right? And we actually can have practice in rest, right? And just we're gonna do nothing today, right? We're gonna hang out, play some games if we want. Maybe we'll watch some TV, maybe we'll eat some chips, but we're just gonna chill. That practice for kids is so important because if we don't give them practice when they're young, they won't have it as a skill as they're older. And particularly when it comes to the brain work that we ask them to do every day as well. So those brain breaks that you're giving them isn't just about improving their behavior. It isn't just about improving their academics. It's also about giving them practice in the experience of taking my brain and pulling it away for a minute and being able to go back, right? Practicing the executive function of alternating attention, right? All of those things, it takes practice. So the more we do this, or the more purposefully we do this, the better. I love this. Um, and then we can celebrate. Again, I know that so many of you guys are doing this so well. So much of our resiliency is stuck in self-esteem, right? And I think that we don't give ourselves enough credit where credit's due. You guys are doing work nonstop. The kids are doing work nonstop, and they are just like achieving like gold star after gold star after gold star, right? Like we are doing so many great things every day, and we can continue to celebrate that. There's no spoiling in celebrating, I think. I think if we deserve a celebration, we should take it, even for small wins, particularly with kiddos who may struggle with self-esteem. I think that small wins can be very important. This is just, I found that list of ways that you could acknowledge and celebrate kids. I just thought that was kind of a nice little summary. But we're going to celebrate. And then the last thing I want to talk about before I get into Sparks is just having kids really start to recognize that there is something uniquely special about each and every one of us. And I think that we sometimes get wrapped up in the points of pride that are given medals, or the points of pride in our school that are announced the most frequently, but there truly is unique greatness in every single one of us. It's just a matter of what is that greatness? What do we want it to be? And how can we use that greatness in a way that benefits ourselves and others? And that's really where we come into the concept of sparks. So, like I said, the Research Institute had three prongs: developmental relationships, we'll talk about next time, resiliency, all these things, and then sparks. And remember, we're really only looking at those one or two kids we're going to target in on. But the concept of sparks came to the Search Institute from the philosopher Plutarch. So the philosopher Plutarch said that children are not vessels to be filled, but are fires to be lit. Children are not vessels to be filled, but are fires to be lit. I think that's so awesome. And the Search Institute, of course, did as well. And they said, well, if children are fires to be lit, then that must mean that there are these embers, these sparks, these things inside of each of us that are just waiting to be fostered to flame, right? These things just waiting there. And how can we help kids begin to identify what their sparks are? Each and every one of us have at least one. I think I would be willing to say all of us have way more than one. But we have at least one. And I find that the spark, it's helpful to start looking for it. You're looking for something that like you really enjoy, you like doing it. It's something that when you participate in doing this, like time disappears for you. It's something that makes you feel good about being you. It doesn't have to be anything that you're good at. You do not have to be good at this thing for it to be your spark. And also, just because you're good at something doesn't mean it's your spark, right? Like I'm super good at cleaning toilets. Please don't give me more opportunity, right? Just because I'm good at something, that doesn't mean that it's my spark, right? So sometimes we might say, well, a kid's really good at math or they're really good at art. And so we think, well, that's their spark, but that might not be their spark, and that's okay too, right? Because it's individual to each and every one of us. And then how we begin to do this work is through the formula of identifying the spark, identifying adults in that child's life who can help that spark build, and then provide opportunity for us to use that spark in a way where they can get their own goals met and our goals met as well. So I'm going to give you a lot of examples here. So I think about there was a kiddo there, it was work refusal was his behavior, and his spark was visual art. He liked drawing. And so through the whole process of work, we kind of identified that art was his spark. And so he wouldn't read. And they, at the time, they were reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And so what the school actually worked out with this student was they said that if he created an illustrated version of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that the school would make color copies for all of the young people in the younger grades. And this kid just thought that was the coolest idea. And of course, he had to read the book to illustrate the book, but then he got it done and the school followed through as well. And they made those copies for the younger kids. That's that finding a spark, being a champion, and providing opportunity. There was a kiddo, he was young elementary, and he had a lot of anxiety around being in the hallways in the morning. All the noise, all the lockers, all the kids. And so the administrators had the intervention they put in place was that he could sit in the office until the hallway cleared, and then he could go to his classroom. And so I came in, I was like, I mean, okay, I wish there was a way that I could clear every hallway for this child for the rest of their lives, right? But let's start trying to build a skill. Let's try to build a strength. And so he said, what is he into? And we found out he was into Guardians baseball. And so we found another adult in the building. It was not his teacher, but there was another adult in the building who was also into Guardians baseball. And so what they decided was, just to start, they were going to, this adult teacher was going to sit in the office with that student and just talk baseball. Right. And so they did that for a little while. And then over a couple of weeks' time, that teacher worked with that student to identify in the hallway bases. So Mrs. James's class was first base, Mr. Smith's class is second base, Mrs. Jones is third. Then once I get to my classroom, that's a home run. And then this teacher helped run the bases with him as he was walking through the crowded, anxious feeling hallway, right? He didn't change the hallway, but he changed the way that child was able to perceive the hallway and be able to chunk it into that really doable goal setting. And that was just an example of, again, finding a spark, getting a champion, and providing opportunity. I think about this a ton because I think about my own spark. My own spark, I have many, two of which are that I like to talk a lot, and I like to tell jokes. So when we're stressed, we tend to fall into our sparks, right? Where we're like, just let me go for a walk. I'll feel better after this. Or like, just give me some time to journal and then I'll feel better. Or maybe let me finish cooking dinner, right? We fall into our sparks when we're stressed. And so I think about that sixth grade classroom, and I walk in and I'm looking at that math board, and it might as well have been hieroglyphics to me on the chalkboard. And, I fell right into my sparks, start talking and telling jokes because it's so much easier as a kid to be bad than dumb. right? And so I was like, okay. And I'm talking and telling jokes. And my teacher, Mrs. Meanie Pants, she did not know how to handle me. I was heavily disciplined, heavily isolated. And I think about that a lot because, she put me at a desk all the way by myself in the back of the room and she ignored me for the rest of the year. And I think about her and I think about if she could see me now, if she could see how I use my spark now, if she would see it as something that was maybe not so disrespectful or maybe not so disruptive. Maybe it was an opportunity. And maybe she could have said, "Hey, Missy, you want to teach the next class?" I would have been like, "Wait, what? You want me to be the center of attention?" Right? Well, yeah, but you have to learn it to teach it so you can come in during your two study halls, which I had at the time. But I don't know. Maybe I would know my multiplication tables now if that's what happened. I did have plenty of teachers do that throughout my life that got me to where I am now. But the more we work with kids and the more we look at them and their skill sets as unique greatness, just let's figure out a way to aim it in the right direction. So this slide is the feedback for Beth and the S2 C2 S2. So if you want to use this, and then I will in just a minute, I will switch it back to all of my information again, if you'd like to take that. I'm so happy you hung with me today for a little bit on this crazy snow day, and I will see you guys all in February, where we will go into much more detail about that 5-point developmental relationship. Thank you guys so much.